Namaskar. Dear students, today we will be discussing about organizational culture. Culture is the word with which we are very much familiar. Even in our families we say that we have a family culture, which means that every family has its own set of norms, code of conduct, and all the family members, they follow a particular way of behavior, or they react in a given situation in a particular way, or their norms are fixed, and how they will behave in a particular situation, that behavior pattern is also fixed or standardized. Just as every family has its own culture, any organization also has its own culture. Because organization is an extended family, as we can call it. In our family we have 4, 5, 6 members. In any given organization, the number of persons in the organization may range from 10 to anything, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, anything. It's a bigger family. And just as every family must have its own norms, every organization also has its own way of behavior, how the people talk, how the people work, how people react in a given situation. And all this together is termed as organizational culture. Every organization is set up by a founder member or members, and those founder members, they try to give vision, philosophy to the organization, and that philosophy is percolated down to the line, and people then who are recruited later on, they follow that philosophy or those norms. And this comes as, or this comes forward as organizational culture. We have many famous examples of organizational culture. Like for example, Tata Group of companies, they have their own culture, or Infosys has its own culture, as we call it, which means that how a Tata employee will behave, how he will work, how he will react in a given situation. This all depends, or this all is as per the norms, as per the guidelines, or as per the standard set. And so you will find that organizational culture for any given organization is developed in order to cope up with its problems of external adaptation. Any organization is working in a given set of external environment. Any organization has its own customers, its own suppliers, its own financial suppliers, government, and people at large. And all this external environment is influencing the organization. Similarly, every organization has its own internal organization or internal environment as well. The people who are working in the organization, what is their background, from where they come from, what is their educational level, all this will decide, and all this needs to be integrated, and then internal environment gets set up. What is important for an organization is integrating external and internal environment in order that whenever the new employees are recruited in the organization, these members, the new members, they also know what is this organization all about, how I should think in this organization, how I should feel things in this organization, and how I should work in this organization. So Why we have family culture? Because when people live together, there are bound to be some problems. But when the culture is in place, the members of the family, they know how to resolve those problems. And so the problems do not get aggravated. In the similar manner, in an organization, when people are working together and using resources which are made available by the organization, there are bound to be some conflicts, there are bound to be some clashes, and particularly when these people are interacting even with external environment, there are bound to be some problems. If the organization has to sustain, the organization must have its own mechanism of resolving these problems. And this mechanism of resolving the problems is the culture. The culture is a torch, is a guiding light in the hands of the members of the organization. As to whenever the problem occurs, they know how they should react, how they should address the problem, and how they should resolve, adapt to the new situation or to the external and internal environment. And so in order to adapt to this external environment and integrating external and internal environment to resolve these kind of problems, organization culture needs to be in place. Also we say that whenever people come in contact with one another, they have to follow certain norms. Like for example, many organizations, they have dress code. Now dress code is also a form of culture, or when in an organization, stories are told about the founders or about those who have contributed a lot for the development of the organization. Like in our family, we tell our children the stories of our forefathers who have contributed a lot for the society, or they have done something very special, and this helps the children to know what is the culture of my family, from where I come from. Similarly, in an organization, stories are told to the members of the founders or of those who have contributed a lot. For example, in Tata Group of companies, stories about J.R.D. Tata are told to the members of the group, so that how J.R.D. worked, how he behaved in a given situation, how he came out of certain problems whenever they were faced, this becomes a culture, this becomes a set norm for the members of Tata Group of companies. In order to place the culture, or in order to develop that culture, organization may have its own formal rules, its own procedures, its own formal code of behavior, tasks or pay systems or jargons even. Every organization, the members of that organization, when they talk to each other, they communicate in a very special language which is understandable only to the members of that particular group. And an outsider may not be able to understand what they are talking about. Even the jokes which are cracked in the organization, they form the part of the culture of the organization. We can say that these are some of the manifestations, rules, procedures, jargons, jokes, pay systems. These are dress codes. These are some of the manifestations of the organizational culture. How we can come to know that this organization or any particular organization has its own culture? We can see it outwardly, at least, from all these norms which are seen immediately when we look at the employees of that particular organization. And so organizational culture is a broader term which includes so many things. It starts from recruiting the people whom the organization should recruit. And while recruiting the new people, the recruiter or the HR person will see to it that those people are recruited who can adapt, who can be compatible with the organizational culture that is prevailing in the organization. So those people are recruited, and once they are recruited, they are trained, they are given inputs about the organizational culture in the form of, first thing, whenever they come to the office, first thing that is told to them is, you must wear a uniform. So there is a dress code. Then they are told that you cannot come late to the organization or to your work. So coming right time is also organizational culture. And it starts right from these small things. And then it goes up to how the employee should behave with another employee, how the employee should behave with his subordinate, how the employee should behave with his immediate superior. It goes up to that level, or how the employee should behave with an outside agency, say a bank or a supplier or a customer. And so organizational culture, many a times you will find that when you give a call, for example, when you make a call to, say, for example, Tata Sky, the standard reception that is given to you on the telephone tells you what is the organizational culture of Tata Sky. And so you will find that organizational culture, it can be manifested in any manner as stated earlier. What is important is the behavior of the people in an organization is guided by the organizational culture. And therefore you will find that the regularities, the behavioral regularities of the people in the organization, they can be seen by the common language that they are using, terminologies that they are using, or rituals that they are following. And from this we can say that the organization has its own culture. Then when there is culture in place, there are certain norms which are set. There are guidelines on how much work they will do, or how they will do that particular work, till what time they will stay in the office, and so on. So standard behavior practices are given and the norms are set. They say that in some organization, the culture is do not do too much, do not do too little. So an employee should not be doing so much that at the end of the day he gets fully exhausted. Or he should not be doing too little that it is not justifiable that why he is being employed. So norms are set, and that is one of the characteristics of organizational culture. Another characteristics of organizational culture is such organizations have dominant values. There are major values that organization advocates and expects the participants to share. In some organizations, for example, the value system is such that we must get the work done. We want result. But the result must be ethical, and the means to achieve those results must be ethical also. This is the dominant value of the organization. But in some organization, it may be that we want result in any case. You may follow any method. You may follow even unethical methods. We are ready for that. But we want result. So you can see both the type of organizations. And an individual will have to decide where I should work, which dominant value I have, and whether that dominant value is compatible with the organization. And so every organization advocates some dominant value, and they expect every member of their company or their organization to follow that particular value system. Then another characteristic is such organizations have their own philosophy. The organization believes about how employees are to be treated or customers are to be treated. So you see the advertisements of banks, for example. Bank of Maharashtra, for example. So they say Apli Jiwhadyachi Bank. So how that means how we treat our customers. By this slogan, by this line, they exhibit, they manifest their culture. That this is our philosophy. That customers are centrally focused. And customers are the people for whom we exist. This is the philosophy followed by that particular organization. Normally, this one line which describes the organization, punchline as we can call it, that reveals what is the culture of that organization. And so every organization which has a culture has its own philosophy, and the policies are set forth. Then such organizations which have their own culture, they have certain rules, guidelines related to getting along in the organization. So every organization has its own rules. Earlier, as I said, that every employee must come 5 minutes before the scheduled time. That is the culture of the organization. In Japan, most of the organizations, they say that every employee should come to the workplace half an hour before the scheduled time. So if the duty of a person is starting at 9 o'clock, the person should be signing his muster or getting into the organization at 8:30, half an hour before. That is the culture which Japanese people follow. So every organization has its own rule like this, and rules are for everything. So how they should behave, how they should walk, how they should dress, everything is laid down in the rules. Then another characteristic of the organizations which have their own culture is organizational climate. What is organizational climate? This is the overall feeling that is conveyed by the physical layout, the way participants interact, and the way members of the organization conduct themselves with the customers and with other employees. So how is the organization, the shop floor, office, or whichever place is there, how it is furnished? What is the layout? Whether it is pleasant to work in that particular layout. How the participants or how the members of the organization interact with each other. When they cross each other, do they greet each other? Do they respect each other's individuality? Irrespective of what is the position that person is holding in the office or in that particular organization. All this develops a feeling about the organization. I am proud about my organization. When the person feels like this, which means that the organization has really very good climate and the organization has really its own culture in place. And so organizational climate is very, very important, because a person, a member of the organization should feel that he is proud of, he takes pride in working for that particular organization. After looking at the definition and characteristics of the organizational culture, what you can do, I have given you a few examples. you can do one exercise, and that is you can list down world's most admired companies as far as culture is concerned. I have given you two examples from India, Tata Group of companies, and I have given you the example of Infosys. Like this, you can find out which are the world's most admired companies as far as organizational culture is concerned. An organizational culture, it is a common perception held by all the people in the organization. So when it comes to culture, every member of the organization has the same feeling or same perception. There is no doubt in the mind of a person that in a given situation, or when I am passing or I am interacting with my fellow colleague or my subordinate, how I should interact with the person concerned. Because the person knows, the member knows that this is the set culture in my organization. In any organization, there is what is called as dominant culture. Dominant culture is a set of core values which are shared by a majority of members of the organization. Normally, dominant culture, these core values are percolated from the top to the down. The founder or the founders, they have their own value system, and those core values are then percolated down the line, and then a dominant culture is formed in an organization. A very simple example, as I am giving you again and again, that nobody, not a single person in the organization comes late on any day. A core value. It may appear to be very simple, but look at the way in which our organizations are run, what we as an individual are doing, and you will find that even this simple rule, even this simple act of the members of the organization, it can form a core value of the organization. Because stories are told that the founder never came late to the office, and this is percolated down the line. At the same time, you will find that along with dominant culture, there are many subcultures which are existing in an organization. Particularly when the organizations are big and they are spread geographically, they employ thousands of people. Such organizations may have subcultures. Subculture is a set of values shared by a minority, a small minority of the organization's member. For example, an organization may have several departments, or the organization may have its offices at several places. The corporate office is in Mumbai and another office is in Bangalore, for example. Dominant values, core values remain the same, but maybe in Bangalore office, they have their own culture which they adapt to suit the external environment in which they are working or the internal environment in which they are working. Because in Bangalore, the problems which they are maybe facing are different from what the employees are facing the problems in Mumbai. And so in order to resolve those problems, Bangalore members, they may develop their own culture which may be called as a subculture, which is a set of values shared by a minority of people. An organization may have its Mumbai office employing say 5,000 employees, and in Bangalore office they have 1,000 employees. So this becomes a minority group, and this group may have its own culture. At times, but it so happens that if the subculture is not in tune with the dominant culture of the organization, then it may weaken or undermine the organization if there is a conflict between the two. And so while this minority group is developing a subculture, it must also remember that that has to be in tune with the dominant culture of the organization. There cannot be a 180-degree difference between the two. And so it is necessary that when the subcultures are formed, the members of particular group, they are trying to resolve their day-to-day problems with that subculture rather than addressing the major problems. And so, in any organization, subcultures are bound to be there. I will give you one example which will be making this point still more clear, because management is not something that is not related to our day-to-day life. For example, every family has its own dominant culture. But suppose the son and the daughter-in-law of that particular family, because of the job and their assignments, the main family, say, is in Nasik, and this family goes to USA, son and the daughter-in-law, they go to USA. Now, dominant culture is with the parents and even with these two, but when they are staying in USA, they develop subculture because they are living in a different set of environment, and in order to resolve their day-to-day problem, they develop a subculture, another set of values. What is important is the relationship between these two, the mother, father, and the son and the daughter-in-law. This relationship will be good and they will be able to respect each other till this subculture is in tune with the dominant culture of the family. Similarly, in any organization, the subculture is bound to be there because organizations are big and there are small groups. Even in the same setup, you have production department, you have marketing department, you have HR department, finance department. So total organization may be employing, say, 2,000 employees, of which the production department may be having 1,000 employees, finance department may be having 50 employees. So finance department may have its own subculture developed. But as I said earlier, this subculture must be in tune with, compatible with the dominant culture of the organization. And then only the organizations can sustain. Otherwise, the subcultures become dominant and they become the organization. It is necessary that the culture must be maintained by the organization. After all, cultures are the result of direct or indirect actions taken by the founders. But sometimes, founders create weak culture. They are unable to create a very dominant culture or dominant value system in the organization. In such a case, the top management that is appointed by the founders, it is their task to see to it that dominant culture gets instilled in the organization. How the organization gets started? A single person or persons, they are the founders. They have an idea of a new enterprise, so they set up a new enterprise. After setting up the enterprise, they bring in the organization one or more key people and they create a core group. But this core group shares common vision with the founders of the organization. Then this core group starts acting in a particular way, starts taking decisions in a particular manner, starts behaving in a particular manner, and this forms the culture of the organization. At this point, some other recruits or some other people also may come in. And then the core group's activities, their behavior, this starts becoming the story of the organization and the organizational culture. How the organization culture can be maintained? Just as in our family, when the parents decide that their son should get married, what they look for? They look for a girl who comes from similar family background, similar culture, for maintaining the culture of the family. Similarly, in any organization, in order to maintain the culture, the first step is selection of entry-level people, whom we are selecting. The selection procedure or the selection is not to be based only on what is the qualification of the person. That is one part of it. But today, particularly, you will find that mainly what the recruiters look for, mainly what the organizations look for is whether this person, though qualified, can get adjusted, is compatible with the culture that is prevailing in the organization. Then, whether the person has the job mastery, then comes next. How the organization is rewarding people. You may have a very strong culture, but if you are not making or if you are not rewarding people adequately as per their performance, people may not be happy with the organization. And then they may not follow the norms or the dominant culture or the core values of the organization. So every employee when is recruited must be made aware about the important values of the organization. If you go to any office, today particularly in last 10 years this change has occurred. If you go to any organization, a big organization, or even a small scale industry, you will find that in the lobby itself a big board is there which gives the core values of the organization. So that any person who is entering the organization knows what are the core values, this organization stands for what. And the employees, the people who are working in the organization, they are again and again reminded of important values of the organization. Also, as I said earlier, reinforcing of these values by telling the stories of founders or the core team, that also helps in maintaining the culture. And promotions and recognition for good work, that is another way of maintaining the culture. If the people develop a feeling of injustice, if people develop a feeling that their good work is not properly recognized, then they may not agree to the value system of the organization, and this may become the culture of the organization. So this can be shown in a diagram. So careful selection of people. If the people are not, or some of them they are not of getting adapted, or you feel that they cannot get adapted or suited to the organizational culture, deselect them. They are rejected. Once they are selected, then they are treated nicely, they are trained, and they are reinforced with the value system of the organization. Along with that, training is given, rewards are given, promotions are given, and the people are encouraged to follow the value system of the organization. The part of the organizational culture is therefore what kind of visible structure the organization has, what kind of language the organization people are using, what value system and beliefs they have, and all this together leads to collective behavior of the people. And this collective behavior of the people is called as organizational culture. For any behavioral scientist, study of organizational culture becomes very, very difficult. Because many a times, the organizational culture, the people, individuals and the groups who are performing in the organization, they have to be mutually compatible, and then only the organizational culture can be maintained. Sometimes the organization, the core team or the top management feels that the culture needs to be changed for many reasons. Maybe some external environment has changed and therefore culture needs to be changed, or internally some changes are there, the top management changes and the new top management brings in new value system and therefore the culture needs to be changed. If originally the organization has appropriate culture in place, then rapid changes can be made. But otherwise, problems will be there in bringing about change in the culture. The top management will have to anticipate what will be the probable obstacles in bringing about cultural change in the organization and be ready to address that. Many a times the employees are not ready to change the culture, who is a powerful stakeholder in the organization. And so it is necessary to convince the employees why the management wants to change the culture. Particularly, you will find that in case of mergers and acquisitions, cultural changes are bound to be there when the two organizations are coming together, either through a merger or through an acquisition. And always or many a times there is a clash between two cultures in mergers or acquisitions. And due to this clash, many a times the merger and acquisition or the acquisition may fail because there is a clash between the two organizations. Today the new type of organizations are coming up, and they are called as relationship enterprise. We have gone beyond merger and acquisition. These relationship enterprise, they consist of a global network of independent company that act as a single company with a common mission. For example, United Lufthansa, Thai Airways and other airways companies, they have formed a relationship enterprise, an independent enterprise called as Star Alliance. This is a relationship enterprise. Now all these companies, United Lufthansa, Thai Airways, all of them, they have their own culture, and now they have together set up a relationship enterprise called Star Alliance. Now what will be the culture of this organization? These are the issues today faced by the organizations or by the companies, and they need to be addressed properly. If the cultures clash, then the organization, the relationship enterprise or merger or acquisition may fail. Or in the same organization, if the top management is unable to visualize the problems and address them beforehand, the top management may fail to bring about the necessary change in the culture of the organization. Always the culture of change in the culture should come from the top. And so it is necessary that the top management first must be convinced that why we are bringing this change, whether that change is really necessary. And if it is necessary, what steps should be followed, what methodology should be followed to convince the people, the members of the organization, that these are the reasons that we want to change the culture. so that everyone gets convinced and the culture can be changed successfully. For example, in our organizations today, earlier all the work was done manually and there was a culture, manually doing work culture in the organizations. Today almost all activities are performed on the computers, on the internet, by using technology. So we have switched from manual work to technology-driven work. And so naturally it was necessary for these organizations to change the culture of the organization, whether people are ready for this and whether they are convinced that this cultural change is necessary. If any organization successfully handles maintaining, creating first culture, then maintaining that particular culture, and then if necessary, when time comes or when it is absolutely necessary, changing the culture successfully, if this is done by the top management, then only we can say that that organization can sustain for a long time. Otherwise, in these changing times, if you stick to the old culture, if you stick to your old philosophies, and if you are not in tune with the time, and if the organization is not moving with the time, then there is every danger that you may not survive in this competitive world. And so, from organizational behavior point of view, organizational culture plays a very, very important role in designing the culture, in maintaining the culture, and if necessary, changing the culture. Thank you very much.